Good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we discussed about how we can handle data binding in React. So, we learned binding different types of data actually. So, that is primitive types and non primitive types. How to bind various types of data. So, what are the issues in binding different types of data and how they work? Some examples we learned. Yesterday we saw working with array. So reading array elements, presenting them. So in the UI, what is difference in JavaScript and jQuery and here React like libraries we saw. So one more important in the data types, you saw how to deal with an array. So how we can work with the concept of array. Now in the data types, you have another option that is object type. Another, how we can deal with an object. You already know JavaScript objects. We already learned about JavaScript object. So we already learned about JavaScript object type. Generally in JavaScript, what is the object? So it is a key and value collection, right? So it is a key and a value collection. Object is a key and value collection. So what is about object? Key is a string type and value can be any type. Can be any type. So object is this. So key is a string type and value can be any type. That is the key and values. Yeah, online people, is it audible to everyone? Is it clear? Yes, yeah. Yes, okay. So here we have this key is string and value can be any type, and you know how to deal with an object. So syntactically, so we create an object. So it comprises of key and value. That's how we define a key and value. So now how do we access the keys and values and present them? Same. Generally, how we access the keys in JavaScript with reference of object name and key. Same. So let's see here. This is our React application. Now in this, let's start this application. Okay. So now we will create an object here. This is yesterday we designed a simple navbar like by using collection arrays, right? Yeah. So let's remove this and create a simple object where product is an object. In this object, the key So it's a JSON type now, right? So the key, some string, and value can be anything. So we have a key price, value can be a number. So the key is stock, so value can be a boolean. So key can be cities, it can be an array, and key can be again an object rating, it can be again an object. So this object comprises of key again like rate, so and it is having like count. So this is a simple object. So generally in your uh, JavaScript, you define the objects in this way. When we define the objects in this way, we can access the objects with reference of this object name, keys and all. And how do we present the keys and values? To present the keys and values, so we will use a simple header. This is a simple like product details, and in the product details here I created a data list, some data term, so name. So how you can access the name? With reference of key. So key is what? Product, and dot name. That's how we can access. Actually, you have another approach. Generally, we have like price. You know, in JavaScript, ES and higher version onwards, ES6 and higher version onwards, you can access with reference of key like this. That means we have a product of and key. Key is what? Price. So, but important is if you are accessing that, that means here we will keep the binding expression. So this is product of price. It shows price not defined. But you know, this is a technique available. But when you use this technique, we use this in destructuring. So you learned about array destructure and object destructure in JavaScript. Later in destructuring, we will see how to manage that. But there are two ways with reference of name, and you can use this destructuring technique. Later you will see that. So here you cannot use the destructure technique. You have to just define what? So name, that means key and value. And we have another data term, that is some stock. And you know stock is a boolean value. We cannot display boolean value directly true or false. Then you need one expression, product dot what stock is equal to true. Then we will put some available. How to deal a boolean we already learned. So then out of stock, we are using a ternary operator and we are displaying. And how to deal with an array we already learned. Cities and data definition. Here we want to present all the cities in an unordered list. So cities is an array. So how you access a binding expression, product dot what cities, it is an array. Then you have to map every city, and for every city we need to create a list item. And you know every list item needs a key. So we will access the city and display here. So city name will be displayed in this. So this is dealing with an array. Already we learned how to present an array type. We discussed about that. Next, another option is rating. So we are using rating. Rating requires an object. Rating have an object in it. So now we need to present this object. How we present the object, we know that. So we need to present the rate, that is product dot rating dot rate, that is the object. So we will put some span. So class bi some star fill, so text success, and here we will keep a square brace, and here product dot rating dot rate count. So this is how we can access an object and display. So this is the basic of dealing with the data type object. So how we can manage an object, how we can use an object in a React. So it's a simple approach. Just in binding expression, we can access with reference of key. So any object related data you can access and present using obj dot key. That's the reference you have to use. Depending on what type of data it is handling. If it is an array, you will map. If it is an of an object. So in this example I will give here, let me copy. Now in general data types, so while working with object in JavaScript, I hope you already learned some important manipulations of object. So when you learn JavaScript object, you know the manipulations of object, which is important. What are the manipulations of object you learned in JavaScript? The first question here is related to object is, so how to get the list of all keys in object? How to get the list of all keys in object? That means how we can read all the keys in object. What do you say? How to get the list of all keys in object? In JavaScript, to read all the keys from an object, usually you have object.keys method. Object.keys method. Object.keys is a JavaScript method which is used to read all the keys from an object. Or you can also use, for in statement. You can also use the for in statement. By using for in also you can access all the keys. If you want to present all the keys from an object, then you have object.keys, or you can use for in. However, you cannot use for in React. You know that, right? Why? Because JSX will not allow any statements. So then you have to use object.keys. Object.keys. So you have an object. So this is the general presentation I already given. This is our example data binding dot JSX. Okay. Now I want to access all the keys. Let's say it is simply with only 3 details are there. Now I want to access all the keys. That means in that object, how many keys are present we want to access. Then usually what we do, we use object. So we have object keys. Okay. So we have to use object.keys. Keys. This is the method. What object.keys method will do? Which object you have to mention? Our object name is what? Product. it will return all the keys in this object in the form of an array. So the result of this method is an array. So how to read every element from array? We have to map every key, and for every key I am creating some list item, and here we are presenting the key. So we are presenting a key, and the key is the key. So now you can see we are reading every key and we are displaying all the keys. So how do we read the keys from any particular object? And you are reading the keys from an object, and how you read the value from an object. Usually what happens now, we have an object. What is the object? Product of what? Key. Product of key is going to return the values. Now destructuring will work. Directly accessing key you cannot use through destructuring technique. That you can do by using what? General object and key name. If you are dealing with an mapping method, through destructuring you can access the values. That is what array and object destructuring is. So how we can read all the keys from an object and how we manage? For that we have to use object dot keys, right? So syntactically like this. So we have a product and it is an object with the name and with price. Suppose we are having like this. We want to access the keys. So we have to use object dot keys and product. On that we have map. We read every key and we present as a list item. So key is equal to the key and the value is the key that we define. That's how we do. So it is going to read every key and return the key. So how to get the list of all keys in an object? This is how we do. This is one general requirement while working with the object. So how to read all the keys? Next, another option is another important method is, so how to remove a key from object. So how to remove a key from object? So if from an JavaScript object, how you remove a key? So by using delete operator. Delete operator. Delete operator is a JavaScript operator. By using this operator, you can delete a key. You can remove a key. So by using delete operator, we can do that. So syntactically, usually how we do, so delete object dot key. That's how we write the syntax. It is going to remove the key from object. Because while presenting and working with certain data, you need to know all its manipulations. So you know how to present an array, then you should know all the array manipulations. Object manipulation. So you have another option here. So how to check for any key in object. How to check for any key in object? You can say how to check or search for any key in object. How to check whether a key available or not. So how to check for any key in object? By using in operator. By using in operator, we have to do that. Syntactically, we write key in object. So this is going to return true if key available. If key is available in that particular object, it is going to return. So if key is present in object, then it returns true. Otherwise, it is false. So we can verify whether the key available or not. So how do we remove the keys? How you read the keys, and how we check whether the key available or not in an object, right? So these are basic manipulations of object. Now, when you know how to deal with an object and what are the limitations of object is, object, the keys must be all string type and value must be some any type, value can be any type. Now what is issue in the object, in why we need to detailedly discuss this? Because in recent React interviews for experience level people also, they ask this question, like what is difference between an object and a map? So actually in JavaScript we also have a map type. We have a map type, object type and map type. What is map type? So map type, it is a key and value collection. Same like object, it is a key and value collection. Then in React interviews, I told you already, React interviews means 70% of your interview will be on JavaScript at any experience level also. 70% of React interview will be on JavaScript. So you must be very strong in JavaScript to crack React interviews. And even at experience interviews also, lot of JavaScript in-depth questions are asked. And what is difference between map type and object type you learned in JavaScript? So map actually, so key can be any type and value any type. So in object, key must be string, and here it can be any type. And what else important is, map provides predefined methods and properties. Map provides predefined methods and properties. It provides predefined methods and properties to manipulate the keys and values, to keys and values. So you don't need external methods to delete a key. In object, we used a delete operator. Delete operator is an explicit operator, means it's an external operator which you are using on object. So to read the keys, you are using object.keys method, which is an external method. That means to verify the key, to read the keys, to remove the keys, whatever techniques you are using in object, they are all explicit. Due to that, object is slow. And map, so map, it is faster. It is faster than object. Why it is faster than object? Because it have all implicit methods. It is having all internal methods. So it provides all internal methods. But one drawback with map is schemaless. That means it is structureless. Object is structured because all keys are one type, values another type. But here key can be different type. That means it is completely schemaless. One can be string, another can be number, another can be boolean. It is structureless. So map is structureless, schemaless, but object is structured. So if you are trying to deal with unstructured data, then the best one is object. But what are the drawbacks of object? Object is slow. Object need lot of explicit methods for manipulations. That's the reason if you are not looking for structured data, then better go with map. And what are the methods? You know how to handle a map. So where some obj is equal to new map, and we have methods like obj set. We have a key and a value. We have obj get. So you can access the key. Obj dot remove. You can remove any specific delete. You can delete any specific key. Obj dot clear. It can remove all keys. Obj dot has. It can find a key. So obj dot size, it knows how many keys are present. Obj dot keys, it returns all keys. Obj dot values, it returns all values. Obj dot entries, it will return both keys and values. You have all internal methods. By using these internal methods, you can easily manipulate. You can easily manipulate. That is the reason. So if you are dealing with the structured data, then go with object. The structureless data, then you can go with map. So data binding is the major concept in any front-end technologies. And Angular, React, JavaScript, jQuery, they all have to depend on this data binding. Access the data from the source and bind to UI. So what a developer should know is how he need to deal with different types of data. That means until or unless you don't know how to deal with the data, you cannot present the data. You need to know all the methods in manipulating. So here you see a map. This is an object, okay? Now I am creating, so where topics is a new map. It is a map type. And into the map topics dot set, we can add a key. This is some key, some React, and it is having some value. So it is, so which one? It is a JavaScript library, something like this. And we have topics dot set, and we have number one, and here we say jQuery is a library of JavaScript for UI, building UI, something like this. Now important, this is structureless. One key is string, another key is number. How do we access these keys and values? So here I will just keep here a map type. So here we are using topics dot get. Get the key name. Key name is React. That is the key we are accessing. And what that key contains, you see it shows what is the value in that. That means you can use a map, but one key is number, another key is string, it is structureless. But all the manipulations will work here. Suppose you want to read all the keys, then what is the option we are having? Topics dot what keys? It will return all keys. Topics dot size, it will return how many keys are present. Topic dot entries, it will return all the keys and values. Topic dot values, it will return all values. Topic dot delete, it will remove any particular key. So you have all implicit methods. The manipulation will be more easy to deal with the maps. So in working with various data, we use these all map types and others. So in frequently asked questions in React interviews is what is difference between object and map? Actually there is another data type set, but in modern JavaScript we don't prefer this set anymore. So instead of set we have other types which can manage the similar functionality. So no more set, that's old methods. So we use either object or map. So what is the difference here? So an object and a map. What are the key differences between object and map? So it is the key value collection. The same map is also a key value collection. So this is the same concept, but here important is what is the key point here? Key is string type. Key is string type. So and here key can be any type. Can be any type. So here another point is it requires all explicit methods for manipulation. So it provides implicit built-in methods for manipulation. So it is slow in access. So it is fast. And it is structured and it is schemaless. Schemaless is structureless. Generally, so many other points we can tell, like it will provide size, it will not provide size, but those all comes under implicit methods. By using implicit methods, we can define that. दोनों ये छछड़ा गिरी कल सुबह से उठ के इसको नींद पूरा हो गया दे देखो कमल वाला पूरा दे दे चल उठ चल अरे नीचे वाला को पकड़ते रहो दे दो मुझे लोग दूसरा कमल ला सोयल. So how an object is presented, how an array is presented. Now, if we know this, then we know how we can design an array of objects. how we can design an array of objects. Remember, initially to show you the basic knowledge of binding data and presenting, we are using a variable. In a variable, we are storing the data. But in reality, there are so many other points to understand. Currently, my intention is to show you and to make you understand how different types of data you handled in JavaScript and how they have to be handled in React. That's the point. Later, we will bring the data from database APIs and we will use them, how to work with that. So, once you know this object and array, and now you also know how to deal with the array of objects, because this is how data is presented in a large scale. So data is stored, data is stored in data is stored as collection, data is stored as collection. So collection comprises of multiple objects, multiple objects. Collection comprises of multiple objects, and each object comprises of keys and values. Each object comprises of keys and values. Data is stored as collection. Collection comprises of multiple objects, and each object comprises of keys and values. That, that means how you usually have array of objects. That means how data is stored. So we have something like products. It's an array, and it is an array of objects. Here we have a name, so we have price. It's an array of objects like this. Now another object, so, and it have some other name and price. This is how generally data is stored. This is how generally data is stored. Large amount of data is maintained in the form of array of objects. Now, how you have to present this data? This already you know. Generally in JavaScript, if you have to do this, it's a lengthy work. In JavaScript, presenting this data, this is a complex thing. Suppose they asked you to create a table and present all this data in a table. It's a very lengthy process. You have practiced this in your JavaScript. You know, in JavaScript, what is the pain in creating a table, right? For example, if this is the data you are having, how JavaScript presents the data, just roughly I will show you. Means how it is going to present the data. Means what is the complexity in JavaScript? See, suppose this is your general HTML. This is your general JavaScript. So we have a script and we have some data here. Products is the data. Now we want to present this data in a table. We want to present this in a table. So table have some border and the table have some width. So in table we have like t head, tr, th. This is name. Another one is price. Now we have a t body. In this body, we need to generate a row for every object inside this collection. That means now how your JavaScript manages that. It's a lengthy approach. So that means what we do on load. On load is a body load. So we write a function body load. On body load, so we have to read products.map. We are reading every product. And what we have to do is for every product, we need to create a row. That means we need to add data into tbody. That means we need to generate a row. How JavaScript will do? Tr is equal to document dot create element tr. We have to create a row. In that we need two cells. One cell is document dot create element. I have to create one cell. Another cell for price. Td price document dot create element td. Two cells, one row we created. And what should be in first cell? In inner HTML, it should be product dot name. What should be in price cell? Inner HTML product dot what? Price. We need to add these two cells in the row. Tr dot append child td name. Tr dot append child td price. Now this row must be appended into body. That means document query selector tbody. Into that inner append child, we have to add tr. This is how we do in JavaScript. In JavaScript, to read the data from an array of objects and to present in a tabular format, this is the approach we have to do. That is the way how we need to read the data and present. So I just run this here, and on body load it is presenting it. That's how we create everything. This is very complex. This is very complex. Now React will simplify this. React is going to simplify this. Let's see now. Here I am having some data. So here we are having some data. This is products. We want to read and present in a tabular form. So here we are writing a table. For table, I will put a class table and table hover. This is all bootstrap here, margin top. In this we have t-head. T-head is having tr, th. One is name, another one is price. Now what we need to do is in the table body, tbody, we need to generate a row. That means now this is the table we are having. We need to generate a row for every record. So here we use a binding expression. And what is the collection? Products. Products dot what? Map. So we read every product, and for every product we will create a row. For every product we will create a row, and this row will have a key, that is product dot name. If product have an id, we use that id. Okay, in this row how many cells we need? Two cells. One cell here we need to present product dot name, and in another cell we have to present product dot price. Product dot price. Then it is going to present the data in this. So this is more easy. That means just in a single line you presented everything. Now the same in JavaScript, the approach for that. Creating elements, appending elements. Now this we can achieve in a simple way in React. So that is the advantage of React. So data binding, so of different data it will be very easy. So how you present this data? So how you present the data. So you can use various array methods to read and present data. So reading the data and presenting the data from an array of objects. So how we can deal with the data and present the data is this. This is just only one point I explained. Later we will deal lot of complex data, different presentations I will show you. So that means just I showed you the difference how it works. I will copy this example, and this is an example of data binding dot JSX. Okay. So we are reading and presenting the data in this. The way of presentation depends on your HTML CSS skills. Suppose if you have more data, product have a photo, product have some ratings, you want to display every product like a card styles. Those all techniques you will see in next levels we will do. When you are dealing with complex data, we can handle that. So you saw how to present different types of data in React. One more thing, one more important data you will come across in your JavaScript is date type. Another important type is date type. So now you are clear about how to present primitive types and how to present non-primitive types. Date type, you know how the dates are configured in JavaScript. So date in date in JavaScript is configured using a date constructor. Date in JavaScript is configured using a date constructor. So uses React uses all JavaScript date manipulations. React uses all JavaScript date manipulations using get and set methods. Using get and set methods. You know how to store date and how to manipulate the dates. So here how you present the date, what are the various ways of reading the date, that is same like JavaScript. So first, how do we store a date value? So you know how do we store a date value? So where suppose MFD some manufactured is new date. Here we have year, some month, day, hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. This is how we store a date. So where now is equal to new date without mentioning any date, it loads the current date and time into memory. So if you are not configuring specific date and time, then automatically it loads the current date. So here Presenting date, dealing with the date type of values is also important. So let's see here how you are presenting the date type. So I am creating a simple variable, and this is some manufactured MFD something is a new date. Into that we need to pass the date. You know the standard format: year, so month, and day something. That's how you pass the date, right? It is mandatory to pass in the same way. So we have hours, some minutes, and seconds, and milliseconds, like this. That's how we configure a date. If you don't pass any date, then by default it loads the current date and time. Now, how do you present this? So I will just keep here date. I'll say MFD, manufactured, suppose manufactured, and I want the date. I'm just accessing MFD, which contains a date. It is going to return the date values. So you see, what is it? Yeah. So this manufactured to date string, right? It will display that value. How do we read the dates? Means I just used a object here. You know how to read the date. So what are the various methods in reading the date? So date methods, you know. What are the various methods in reading the date? We have get hours, we have get minutes, so we have get seconds, so we have get milliseconds, we have get day, get date, we have get month, and get full year. These are all the date methods for reading to string, actually to string. Yeah, you have two local string, you have two date string, so two time string, so two local date string. These are all date methods. To local time string. These are all string methods. These are the basic date methods you learned in JavaScript to handle the dates. You have to use them to read the date. So hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, day, date. And you know all these methods will return a number. So you have to handle through the numbers. You have to manage using numbers. So hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, day, these are all reading. How do we set? For that you have set methods now. Set hours. We have like set minutes. We have like set seconds. We have like set milliseconds. So we have like set date. We have set month. So we have like set year. These are all set methods. So by using these methods, you can get and set the date. So these are all date related manipulations. So if you want to present date, then you have to use all these methods. And here I'm accessing by using to date string. To date string, it is going to get me the date. I'm using like to local date string. To local date string, it will return in this short format. You have like to string, you have like to string. That means it is going to return the lengthy format of date and time. You want only time, to local time string. To local time string, it will return only time. These are all various methods of presenting date and time. These are all JavaScript methods only. That is nothing new here, right? So manufactured date that we've defined, if date is not defined, then automatically it loads the current date. If date is not defined, it will load the current date and time. It will return the current time. So how to deal with these dates and times dynamically in later stages you will see, right? So initially this is the basic way of reading the dates and configuring. So just a syntax example I will give here is equal to new date and so some date, day, month, year, and the format of date we defined here like this. And how do we present it? MFD dot to local date string or to local time string to date anything. So these are all the various JavaScript methods for handling date and time values. So now you have a clarity on understanding with presenting different types of data, right? So data binding is presenting the data, but what people face issues is dealing with the different types of data. Some issues in presenting an array or an object. So you should know all these techniques for that. So I given a complete clarity on how we can present different types of data in React. So what is difference in your JavaScript and here how we handle? But for storing the data, what we were doing, we are creating a variable. In a variable, we are storing the data and configuring it. So what is important key point here is a React component cannot store data. So cannot store and use data, store and use data from a variable. A React component cannot store and use data from a variable. But all our example up to now was storing data in a variable. But React component cannot store and use data from a variable. As of now, temporarily it is working fine, but that is not correct. Why it is not correct? Because actually, why it is not? Because variables are immutable types. Immutable types. And a component cannot use immutable Immutable data. Variables are immutable types and component cannot use immutable data. So then how we maintain data for a component? Then how do we maintain data for a component? Where we store data? So variables are immutable. Then where to store the data for a component? So where to store the data? For that we have a solution, that is state in React component. State in React component. This is the major concept in React. State in React component. So this is very, very important. So in React, data is managed through state, not directly through variables. In JavaScript, you already learned what is state management. In JavaScript, you learn different types of state management techniques. What are those? Local storage, session storage, cookie storage, right? These are all state management techniques. So usually why you need state? Because HTTP is stateless protocol. That's the basic thing you learn. So the point here is, so HTTP is a stateless protocol. Stateless protocol means it cannot remember information between requests. That means the memory allocated for a request will be removed after the request is completed. If you want to carry the data from one request to another, then you need a state. So stateless means, so stateless is nothing but, stateless means, so it removes the memory allocated for a request. It removes the memory allocated for a request when it completes the request. Completes the request. So it removes the memory allocated for a request when it completes the request. So stateless nature is good because it can manage memory well. But if you want to use the data in another request, then this is not great. So React components, React components are handled over multiple requests. React components are handled over multiple requests. Multiple requests. Hence, they require a state to store the data and use across requests. Across requests. That is very, very important. Generally, React components are handled over multiple requests. That means a component is used with several requests. And if it is unable to provide data between requests, then it is difficult. So a component must able to store the data and provide it for the next request. For every request, if data is lost, then that is not good. So usually when we design components, just now we used a variable. Variable is not state. Variable will be automatically removed after the request finish. For the next request, the data is not available. The data will reset again. We want to carry the data across requests and maintain data. For that, we need a state. Actually, React up to version 17, they provided this state internally for class-based components. Class-based components means if you create a component with class, JavaScript class, then state is available. That is why earlier people used to call class components as stateful components and functions are stateless. That means function component don't have a state. But in 18 version onwards, they introduced state for function also. That means earlier React is different. Now latest React is different. In latest React, there are so many new methods which will handle all the issues they were facing earlier. Earlier, people have to depend on classes for every action, but now function can do everything. So, actual point here is, so provides React provides state for class components, but not for function components. Function components. It provides state for class components, but not for function components. So React 18 introduced new hooks. Hooks are nothing but methods. New hooks to configure a state, for function component. React 18 introduced new hooks to configure a state for function component. So, and the hook is actually use state. So the hook name is use state. That is a method. So this is going to provide a state for your component. So do not use variables for storing the data. Always use a state for storing the data. You can use variables for storing the data and managing within a request. Within a request, you can manage, but across requests, variable cannot be. So we are not saying that you should not use variables in function. We are saying that you can use variables in a function component, but they are not accessible across requests. If you want to manage your data across requests, then it should be state, through state. How it works, how we can manage. So, how to configure the state? So, configuring state for a React function component. To configure state for React component, first thing you have to import state, use state hook from React core library. From React core library, you have to import use state from React library. This is the React core library. You have to import this hook. So later we will learn about class components, but if you are working with class components, they by default have state. Function components don't have state. So you have to define the function components here. So with the useState hook. Now how this useState can manage your data? Actually, useState provides two members. So one is a getter to read value and setter to write value. Getter and setter. You can say useState provides two accessors. Am I right? Because these getters and setters are accessors. Now you have to use these two members from useState. So useState returns two accessors. One is getter and setter. So you learned destructuring technique. Actually, you learned destructuring in general JavaScript. So suppose we have where some values is equal to array 10, 20. Now this is an array with returning two values. Now I want to store these two values in two different variables. I want to store these two values in two different variables. Then what JavaScript teaches you? You use a destructuring technique where A and B is equal to what? Values. That's how you do. You know this in JavaScript. Array destructure. That means now the values 10 will be in A, B, T. This is destructuring. useState is also returning two values. One is getter, another one setter. In that case, how you configure that is actually useState is configured like this. We have a constant and we have a getter and we have a setter is equal to useState. That's how we define. That is the destructuring technique. The first one will be to read the value present in state. Second one will be to store the value into the state. That means here, if you want, you can initialize the value. That means constant. So we have defined suppose I said name. So this is set name is equal to useState and here some value. Now what the type of data present in state? State is a string. It can be any type. That means state can handle any type. So that means a state can handle any type. So state is any type. That means it can be number, string, boolean, array, object, anything you can store. Now how to access it? We have to access it with the reference of first one, name. That is the getter. Na? First one is getter, second one is setter. That means it's not necessary that every time you use a setter. Setter is required only when you want to store. If you want to just read, you can use just only getter. But the first place is getter, second place is setter. If you remove the setter, only getter will be there. You know that if only getter is there, it is read only. It will not allow to write. So this is how we configure the state. That means now in this useState, you can store any kind of data and you can access with reference of the getter. By using the getter, you can access. So how to print name? So to print name, we have to just use the option like name. That means whatever name is stored inside it, it will get. Now in interviews, several interesting questions they will ask like why you use const for declaration. So can I use var or let? You can use var or let. But why a const is only recommended for state? Because first thing is a state must be initialized. Without initialization, you cannot use state. State cannot be assigned, it must be initialized. In JavaScript, what is mandatory for initialization? In JavaScript, how you will say that initialization is mandatory? By using const. You know that var and let are not mandatory for initialization. Const is mandatory for initialization. That means state must be initialized, compulsory. That is the reason it is declared with const. Another interesting question asked in interview is, they will ask you like, if I define with const will not allow to assign, then how I can store? How you will say setter will work? Const will not allow to assign, na? Const will not allow assignment. Then how you say setter will set a value? But you learned that detail in JavaScript. Constant is not read only. Constant means it allows to set a value at the time of initializing memory. At the time of initializing memory, again it can store a new value. Can a constant change? Yes, it can change. A constant can change. It changes every time when it is initialized. That is the technique working here. That means every time state is initialized, when it is initialized, it will take a new value. So that is the reason it is const. So how you store the data now? You see, all these examples you learned up to now are with variables, but in reality it is not like that. Generally in our JavaScript, in our React, what we have to do, we have to import use state from React. After that, here we need to configure a constant with two members. As of now, we don't need a setter. We will just use one getter. Getter is what? Suppose product. And it uses use state. And in this, you can store anything. I am creating an object type. That means now product is an object. In this, we have name. So in this, we have price. And you see, this is an object now. Now, how to access the data? So name, how you access product dot name. So in the next line, price. So we are accessing the price and we will use price is product dot price. Product dot price. You can create any number of details like that and display. That means now you will not use any variables. You will use all state. That means you have to configure a constant. This is categories. Categories is use state. Use state is an array. So we have like all, we have like electronics, like so fashion, something like this. So that is how we can define. Now how you present this? So how you present, we have an unordered list. We have this time, what is it? Same categories dot map. We read every category, and for every category we create a list item with a key configured with the category, and the value is also the category. That's how we are configuring, and all the data is working same. But this time I am not using a variable, I am using state. This is the right way of storing the data. Right way of storing the data. So in React, you have to configure a state and there store the data and you access. As of now, we are initializing data. Later, this data will come from APIs. We access from API and use them. But currently, we are just using only get. How we can set? That means this is important. Data binding dot JSX. This is example. Now you have just learned how to manage the data for a component. But in this, there are important points. Actually, data binding techniques are present. Data binding techniques are present, like one-way binding, two-way binding. React supports only one-way binding. Now this is a problem. What is one-way binding and what is two-way binding? So how we manage these binding techniques important. That we'll see tomorrow. Right, in tomorrow's session we will discuss about the data binding techniques like one-way binding and two-way. What is one-way and what are the advantages? What is two-way? Why React is not having two-way internally? How it manages two-way then? All these are important. That we'll see in tomorrow's session. Okay. So all these notes is available in the Google Classroom with previous videos and all, right? If you don't have, our admin will send you the classroom code. You can check it from there. Okay. Then tomorrow we will continue with this. Huh? Right.